Hello everyone, today we're going to go over some routine cleaning and maintenance for your Argos. I know this video is a bit late since we started shipping about a year ago. So for starters, we'll go over daily cleaning you could do, and then we'll go into the more routine and somewhat in-depth maintenance. Your machine will get some splatter as you use it, so I would recommend getting something just like a paper towel with water, or sometimes we'll use isopropyl, and you can just get that and wipe any coffee residue off your machine. The problem is if you do use isopropyl, it can lead to some streaking. So what we also use is you can get some stainless steel cleaner, generic cleaner. We'll spray it into a towel, and then you can use this to polish up your covers. So we'll wipe it on. It doesn't have an oily residue to it, but it does clean it well, and you don't really get streaks. And so then I'll go and I'll wipe it off afterwards, and just makes it nice and clean looking. You could also get an oil for your wood panels if you wanted to. I usually just leave those, so I'm not going to go full on with this, but you get the idea. So next up, the biggest one is going to be descaling. So I would recommend descaling at least quarterly per year, so every 3 months, but it really does depend on how often you use the machine and the hardness of your water. Really what I would recommend is just a routine descaling, but you can easily open up the boiler cap, get a light, like a phone light or a small flashlight, look inside and just see if it looks like it's starting to get some kind of deposits on it. So for descaling, you'll make sure your machine is depressurized. I have a descal here by Ernex, and so pretty much you just want something that has a citric acid in it. And so you could buy a bag of citric acid and just dilute it with water. This has some other stuff in it. I don't entirely know. Or maybe this is, citric acid, sulfamic acid, and maybe that's it. But I've started using this. This is really good. I'll throw some pictures up so you can see some before and after of what I'm doing. And so what I would recommend, what this also calls for, is this says 100 grams of descal for 2 liters of water. This takes about half a liter of water, or 0.6 is the boiler size. So I would honestly do 20 grams of this powder. So I'm just going to use my lunar scale here. Here's a small cup and a spoon. So I'm going to put that cup down. I will pour in 20 grams. I'm going to dump this straight into the boiler here, and I'm going to top this off with water just like I would for normally refilling the boiler. And so that will pretty much mean leaving about an inch or two at the top there. So I'm going to leave about 2 inches here. So 2 inches at the top, put the cap on, and I'm just going to turn the machine on. Okay, I've got this turned on, set to 92°C. I'm going to let this heat up and get the temperature. And so because we're using a citric acid, which is great for stainless steel, when you heat up a citric acid bath, you're essentially passivating, which helps reduce corrosion. The problem is we do have a couple parts that are brass, so our overpressure valve and our pressure stat, and maybe a few other things, but those are, if they are left in citric acid for too long, it can start to corrode those too much. So, and I believe the bottle says you don't want to leave it for more than like 30 minutes or 20 minutes. So what we'll do is we'll let this heat up to temperature. And once it's at temperature, we'll let it sit for maybe a minute or so. We will pull some blank shots through the shower screen. So that'll help clean all the pipes and tubes and everything and flush any debris out. So we'll pull some blank shots through. We'll do some steaming to get some of this, and then we'll go to steam mode. We'll let it heat up a bit more, and we'll let it sit at steam mode probably for about another 10 minutes, which I think by that time is when it'll go into sleep mode. And so once it's heated up, we can turn it off, let it cool off. We'll let it cool down for about 5 minutes, and then we'll dump it. So that'll be our limit. We don't want to really go above 20 minutes of this citric acid in there. And you'll see when we get there, but we'll dump it, and we'll essentially rinse it out and flush it. And so you could refill it with some clean water, heat it up, repeat the process to flush it through, or you could flush it by just adding water, dumping it into a bucket, and then repeating. So for now, we'll just let it heat up. All right, now that this is at temperature, what I will do is I'm going to take the drip tray. I usually hold it on the top here and flip it in my sink. So I've got a dump bucket here. I'm just going to flip it into this dump bucket just like that to get anything out. And then I will slide the top screen off. So now it is just an open tray. This will make it a little easier when we pull our blank shots. I'm even going to slide a little paper towel. You could use any kind of towel back here just to catch any additional splattering. I'm going to keep my portafilter in there because might as well clean it out. And so what I will do is just pull this down, let some water flow through. I'll stop it, let it sit for maybe 30 seconds or so. And I'll do this again. All right, now let it sit for, I don't know, maybe 2 minutes. I'm gonna empty this water out. You could even remove the portafilter. There's a little bit of coffee debris in there, so I'll wipe everything out to clean it up. And do one more small one. Okay, now I'm gonna put it into steam mode, let it heat up even more. Okay, so I will grab my steam pitcher, throw it under here. This can get a little messy with just all the steam coming out, so I'm gonna crack open the steam wand. You could even grab a towel, and you could throw a towel over top. I'd recommend putting it on the machine side. Make sure you leave a vent so it can vent out away from the machine. That'll help reduce some of the splatter. All right, great, that should be good. So I'm gonna cut that off, and I'll let it sit for another 5 minutes. Now that we've let it sit, I'm gonna turn the machine off, let it cool off. I don't want it to cool for much longer than 5 minutes because we don't want to go past that 20-minute mark of letting the citric acid sit in there. We'll let it sit for a bit, and then after 5 minutes, we will bleed out any remaining pressure by, we could do both the group head, just to get a little bit more flowing through there, and by the steam wand. So now that we are up to steam mode, I'm gonna let it sit for maybe about 5 minutes, then I'll bleed some steam out of the wand to clean the wand out, and then I'll let it sit for another 5 minutes, turn it off, and we'll let it cool off. All right, once we're confident that all the pressure is out of the machine, I'm gonna close the steam wand again, so next time we start it up, it's not gonna leak out. I will remove the boiler cap, and instead of dumping what's in there, the remaining water immediately, I'm going to add more water in to help cool it off, make it a little easier to manage the machine. So I'll just fill it back up. I'm gonna let it sit for a minute or so, just help cool it off. I will remove the drip tray. I would recommend grabbing a towel or a few towels. You can kind of wrap it around the body, or I like to grab it underneath the group head, and you could grab the base plate here, or honestly I will grab the lever because this is a spring lever, so it is pretty rigid. But what I will do is I'll take it, I have my dump bucket here, but you could just take it over to a sink. You have a few options. If you're doing this while it's hot, obviously be very careful, you don't want to drop the machine. Best case would be to let it cool off, but essentially you'll go to the sink, and if you feel comfortable with it, you can flip the machine. I would recommend flipping it on the side of the steam wand, just because that's where our valves are, so they'll close off better as pressure flows by them. So I'll just take the machine, I'm gonna unplug it first, and I will dump out the water that's in there, and then I will refill it up with clean water. All right, so that is drained. And now we'll refill it up. And so what I would recommend is right after you refill it, you can swish it around a little bit, but I'll go right ahead and just dump that straight out, because that's still gonna have some of the descaling residue in there. So we wanna try to clean that out and flush it out. And you could do this maybe 2 more times, and so let's just dump it again. All right, so I'm gonna do that 2 more times, and then what I would recommend is just refilling it and doing another cycle. So just cycle it through by turning it on, put it to steam mode, pull some more blank shots, bleed through the steam valve just to make sure we get all that residue out, and so then that would be the descaling process. Okay, once you've finished descaling your machine, I would recommend removing the piston assembly and doing some routine cleaning on that. So I'll take out the 4 screws. You might find it's got some coffee grounds on it, so the best thing to do would be to just wipe the outside clean and re-grease those seals, but we'll also want to clean out the bleed valve in there, which I will show you. So I will have a towel ready. I'm going to pull this out. You can see, I'm going to bring it a little closer here. I'm not sure if you can see, but there is some kind of dirty grease marks on there. This one doesn't look too bad overall. I will wipe that clean. And then what we'll want to do, which we'll go to the table, sit down and do that, but we will remove the bleed valve, wipe that clean, and then reinstall everything. Oh, and actually, before we get too far, what you should do while you're at this stage is get some sort of a clean towel, paper towel, whatnot. Just go inside there and just clean this out. So we'll clean any excess grease out. We can wipe along the bottom by the shower screen. I've actually had a couple people asking about how to best remove your shower screen, which I wouldn't really recommend doing unless you really want to swap it out. But you have 2 methods. One is you can remove the piston assembly. If you don't plan on reusing the old one, you could just press it out. It might damage it a little bit. If you do plan on doing it, you could disassemble your piston assembly, drop your piston in, use your piston to push it out. The last method would be to grab a nice flat tip screwdriver, and essentially you can grab a towel here. It might be better if I were to flip this on its back, but essentially there's a small lip on the edge of this shower screen, so if you can get this in here, and you would be prying against the bottom plate, so you could put a piece of towel or something to protect it, and you can work your way around prying it out. You just do have to be very careful not to scratch your machine, especially if you have a powder coated machine. So yeah, it can work, but it does take some finessing of just getting it in there, prying it against the side of the screen to get it out. You really just have to work your way all the way around. Okay, we've got the piston assembly disassembled, wiped off, paper towel, and so we will take this part for a quick cleaning. Side note, in the shop, we like to use these, they're actually dog food bowl mats, these rubber mats, but they're pretty nice for resting your Argos on so you don't damage or scratch anything. They are nice mats to do some work on. Okay, so we will remove this. You do need to be very careful not to lose the small bleed valve ball in here. So we will unscrew this. If you can see, I'm going to try to zoom it in here. See if it'll focus. It is a little dirty around here. That's not a huge deal, but the ball will also be dirty, so I'll try to show that on this blue mat here. So you might need a small pick to get this O-ring out of here. So I'm going to pop this O-ring out. Should be able to reuse this no problem, but I would wipe the O-ring off, and then let's show the ball. I had recently cleaned this one, so this one shouldn't be too dirty. See if I can bring this up close to the camera. But you will notice it will look a little kind of foggy with some coffee residue. So I would really just get a small towel or paper towel and just polish this ball off, clean it off. If there's any small bits of coffee residue on it, when the ball is pushed up against the O-ring to seal it, it might not get as great of a seal as we want. And then same thing as air is passing around the ball as it's escaping during the bleed process, it also just might not work as efficiently. Okay, so now I've polished that off, I've wiped this O-ring down. We do not want to grease this O-ring because it can cause the ball to stick to the O-ring, and it's not always heavy enough to just drop back down on its own, which is necessary for allowing any water that's seeped up above the piston to drain back out. And then I might get a small Q-tip or a piece of this towel to just clean the inside of this valve. So it's just some very basic cleaning. I wouldn't recommend using any soap, dish soap in this or anything, as it can cause a bunch of bubbles if you don't clean it out perfectly. You could use some isopropyl if you really want to clean it out, but this should be plenty fine. Just get a little bit of cleaning. And then for reassembly, we'll drop the ball in first, then the O-ring on top. Make sure that's seated flush on there. And then I'll start with it by hand. I don't want to flip this because sometimes the ball can cause the O-ring to fall out and become unseated. So I always want to keep it upright and then I will start it in the piston upright. And actually, I would also recommend, while this is out, you could rinse the top of your piston, so just get some water up there, clean any debris out, clean the bottom of it, and get a Q-tip or a piece of paper towel and just clean the inside of this out, just clean any debris. So then for reinstallation, we'll hold the ball upright, we'll get it started by hand. We don't want to tilt the piston, because if that O-ring comes unseated, then it will not seal like we need it to. So I'll get that going as far as I can by hand, get the wrench. Sorry if this is a little out of view now. And we'll just go the rest of the way until it's snug. Cool, so I will snug that up. You can even shake it around. Hear that ball rattling. Cool, we know we're good. And then I will re-grease this and then reinstall. So I'll show you guys how much grease I would put on. Alright, these are our little tubs of Molly Coat. We have these reusable Q-tips we use. This is about the amount I'm using. I'm going to put a couple dabs just in a couple spots throughout. Might grab a little bit more. Alright, and then I will go ahead and use my finger to just spread it throughout. Actually, I'm going to want a little more. So see if you guys can see this on the camera, with just a nice thin coating evenly spread throughout. If I get it in the middle here, it's not a huge deal. You can always wipe that up with a paper towel. And then from here, we're good to reinstall the machine and fire it back up. Alright, here you can see some scratches that have formed on our shop machine. I will take this and I'm going to gently press and go with the grain. So I'll try to use a few fingers. You could use a block, would be ideal to get even pressure. And so I'll just work in small sections, set it level. And go straight forward and backwards, and then I'll move to a new spot, straight forward and backwards. Keep sliding down. I don't want to keep pressing while moving side to side, because then you get these diagonal lines. And so I recommend starting off with more of a lighter pressure, and then gradually push down more if you need. And then you can blend this into surrounding areas by just going around it and lightly pressing, kind of blend it. So again, you don't need to do this, but if you do want to keep your machine, get some pristine condition, you can do this. This is the 800. It's good. 800 or 1000 will match that. Once I've done this, I will come through with a little bit of metal off there, and there's maybe a little bit of scratching. I have to go through. I'll have to go through with some isopropyl just to wipe off any metal debris, and then finally I'll come back through with that polishing compound. Keep that there. And the stainless steel polish. Come through, I'll let it sit for a little bit and then wipe off. And so you can see we cleaned up some of those scratches up there. It's not perfect, but it is our shop machine, so we could go more. But that is how I would recommend cleaning those up. All right, everyone, thanks for watching. If you have any questions about anything we've gone over, feel free to reach us at support@odysseyespresso.com, or you can check out our Discord. We have a lot of active members there who can help answer questions, as well as our own technicians in the support team. Thanks a lot.